All right, welcome into Rise to the Victors. This is the Maize Blue review crew coming at you guys on Monday night to talk about Michigan versus Iowa. Wolverines come out on top, get off to a 20-0 lead, coast a little bit in the fourth quarter, but I mean, for the first time in a long time and a few times in the history of Kinnick against top five teams where a team cruised more or less. Michigan won by double digits, something they haven't done much of in the history of playing at that godforsaken stadium. It was my first visit there, and it was an awesome city and an awesome stadium, an awesome experience. But as for the game and as for football, we saw some more plays out of J.J. McCarthy, especially a touchdown pass that was encouraging. The defense getting pressure late when it needed it most, despite some lackluster looks there in the middle parts of the second half. A strong first half from the defense. An injury, Caden Colzar goes down. We're unsure on the nature of that injury. As of right now, no confirmation from the program yet on what that might be, but he was hurt, and as we know, he's a special teams ace. So a few things to take away from that game, whether it be storylines or injuries or whatever it may be. So with that being said, I'm Brandon Justice. I've got Josh Henschke with me, Zach Libby, Davis Mosley, and Brock Heilig. A little bit of everything from our crew here at M&BR. And as we always do with these roundtables every Monday, we'll be breaking down that game, talking about it, some reactions from it, maybe a little game or two, whatever it may be. So we'll start with Josh and just what you can take away from Saturday's game, where you think really the state of the program is at here, 5 weeks in, 5-0, an impressive road win over Iowa, a win over Maryland that's only going to look better, it seems. So where do you see this team at right now?
Yeah, I think they're right where we pretty much thought they were going to be 5 games into the year. The expectation with there was going to, be a favorable schedule here, for the next couple of weeks, and this is obviously setting up a big top 10 matchup potentially next weekend with Penn State. But yeah, I think Michigan is right where they want to be. I think they've continue to answer questions that we've had over the past couple of weeks, and this test at Iowa was the next big one, and they passed it. You could argue they passed with flying colors too. So yeah, I think as for the direction of this program, it's only going to go up from here. I don't think Indiana is going to be that big of a test, this week. But if things continue to trend in the right direction, we're talking about a big time matchup and another big test. So, yeah, I mean, they just keep continuing to win and play good football in all facets. And there's plenty of stuff that you can take away from the game in terms of things to fix. But as we said last week, it's much easier to discuss things to fix after a win than a loss, because really when the grand scheme of things, when you look at this, the things to fix aren't program changing things to fix. They're really kind of minuscule stuff that you can break down, that's only going to get stronger as the season goes on, as the offensive line becomes more more, it becomes as the chemistry and gels a little bit, and the young guys on defense kind of learn the ropes a little bit more, and have some tangible film tape to look at. But yeah, as of right now, on a Monday after Iowa, you absolutely take that win, regardless of what Iowa is and what their year is like. I mean, they haven't won in Kinnick since 2005, so that's a big win. And it's just there's just more momentum for the year as it goes on, and that's all you can really ask for at this point, is just kind of just getting out of these games unscathed, with some stuff to work on and with a lot of good stuff to point to as well.
All right. Let's go over to Zach Libby. Libby, in your world, let's talk a little bit about, and we're going to kind of take it off topic just a little bit, but in recruiting, anything noteworthy over these last few days? I know Michigan's kind of away from home for a couple of weeks, but in the recruiting world, anything noteworthy that we can recap from the past week?
Yeah, I mean, I was at Washington, D.C. this past weekend to see 2023 five-star athlete Nicholas Harbor out of Washington, D.C. While you guys were watching Iowa lose, I was watching the top target on the board play a Saturday afternoon game a day after the hurricane went through the city. So that was a fun excursion. I'm sure we'll be talking about this more on the Who Got Next podcast, which will be out tomorrow. So that'll be fun. Be sure to look out that. But yeah, no, it was good to see Harbor for a second time in about a month. We got to see him playing offense and defense, and we also got to talk to him about Michigan's efforts in recruiting him. So we'll articles and everything will be out more detailed. But yeah, I think after the official weekend, just to have a little bit of surprise, I guess, or I don't know, set the foundation. I think Michigan's in a really good spot right now. So we'll see. But yeah, it's going to be a race for what could be the next few months. So it's something we're going to closely be eyeing.
All right. Before we hand it off to Brock and Davis, make sure you guys are following us on Twitter at Michigan Rivals and then on TikTok and Instagram, Maize Blue Review. Let's play a little game. We'll start with you two. You guys can be our little guinea pigs, I guess, our young ones of the crew here tonight. We're going to play a game of Believe It or Don't Believe It. And which one are you going to pick? That's the ultimate game. It's not going to be that hard, so fair warning. It's just some notable numbers. All right, we'll start with Brock. Brock, if I told you that J.J. McCarthy had under 10 design runs on the season, would you believe that or would you not believe that?
You're talking up to this point?
Up to this point, does he have under 10 design runs?
Yeah, I believe it.
Under 10. That's correct. He's got 8. He's got 8. He had 3 against Colorado State, and then he's got 5 since. So he's got 8 designed runs. And I think it's pretty evenly split between what was zone and what was gap. But J.J. McCarthy not using his legs much. We're talking about this in the mailbag today. Only 2 scrambles on the year as well, which is kind of shocking, right? We thought J.J. McCarthy was going to be this big scrambling threat. Well, we kind of saw on Saturday with using his legs, we thought he was going to run that into the end zone, but ends up just flicking it over, DeJean's head and throwing it to Donovan Edwards and doing what we always heard about J.J. McCarthy. It's that he's always trying to do quote unquote too much, right? And that kind of seemed like a play where it was, but like Joel Klatt said after, it pays to have a guy that athletic and he delivers in a way like that. So Brock, what do you think about how Michigan's used him with his legs? They seem to be protecting him a bit since the Cade McNamara injury. Just your overall thoughts on their usage of his legs and where they go from here with that. with that.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting a couple weeks ago. I think it was the Maryland game when Charles Woodson went up and told McCarthy, "Hey, you got to use your legs more." And we saw what he can do in that one play that you just described there against Iowa, where he scrambled, evaded the pass rusher there, and made something happen. And that's just a 5-star play, right? And so if they want to protect him because McNamara's out, then that's a fair argument, I guess. But I mean, if you're JJ and you have that running ability, you got to at least use it some of the time to make sure the defense is respecting that. And just the dual threat ability that he has. I mean, it's got to be used. And for 8 design runs in now 5 games throughout the season, I guess he didn't play much in the opener against Colorado State, but I do think that that's something that should be looked into a little more.
All right, we'll shift gears over to Davis Mosley, Davey Scoops, the man himself. We'll continue with some J.J. McCarthy talk here, Davis. Just want to hear what you think about how he handled that road environment, the type of poise he showed. And then one thing I guess some people are gleaning from this game, not so much kind of with a grain of salt, but the offense did shut down a bit when it was being pushed there late with 2 straight drives under 2 minutes and one of them 3 and out kind of with their backs against the own end zone there. Just your thoughts on if you think that was a byproduct of the situation or if maybe the offense did kind of get shut down when the pressure was on against a good defense like Iowa.
Yeah, I think the fact that they were going up against the number one scoring defense in the country had a lot to do with that. Coming into the game, I was giving up 5.8 points per game, and we know the way that they like to win is field position, punting. I think they're 6 or 7-1 when they punt 8 or more times in a game, and that's just like a ridiculous stat. The way they win is based on field position, and that 3 and out, like you said, they were pushed up against their own end zone. I can't blame too much on that. Overall, I think the most important thing out of the performance, everybody wants to look at, what did McCarthy throw for? What did he produce? All that. His completion percentage, 75%. You cannot, you just can't be mad about that. 18 to 24. Yeah, he had 150, 160 yards, whatever. 1 touchdown. The key number is 0 turnovers. And that's what he's done all year. He hasn't turned the ball over yet this year. And that was the one thing that everybody was a little, worried about coming into the year with McCarthy. Was he going to turn the ball over a lot? They had that reassurance with McNamara last year. He didn't turn the ball over a whole lot, and everybody said, "Oh, well, it's going to be JJ." He's the turn water into wine, but he can also turn wine into water. He's more turnover prone, so to say. He hasn't showed that yet, and against the best team to turn the ball over against in Iowa over the last handful of years, he ended up with 0 turnovers, and that's the number that I look at and say, you know what, that's the reason. And that's one of the biggest reasons why Michigan won the game in Kinnick.
All right, Blake Corum is this offense's other star. So switching gears away from J.J. McCarthy, who deservedly gets a ton of credit for a lot of this team's success so far this season. I think that has to do with his youth and the maturity that he's shown and being able to do that. But apart from that, Blake Corum is quietly, or maybe not so much quietly now, but he was before the Maryland game quietly, having an excellent start to the 2022 season. But now 5 weeks in, he's kind of firmly going off, so they say, right? And leading the country in touchdowns with 10. And not only that, but he's got the second best overall grade among running backs in the country, according to PFF. I think he's right behind Mayan Williams from Ohio State. He's got an 89.6 grade right behind Williams, who's at 90.5. And then he is also 6th in the rush grade as well. And I think he's 2nd in fumble, and he's really high up there with blocking as well. So Blake Corum's just having one of those tremendous all-around years. Now, that being said, you look a little bit deeper at the numbers. He's not super high up there in yards after contact. He's not even super, super high up there in explosive rate either among running backs, meaning a lot of what he's doing is a byproduct of his offensive line, which brings me to my next point. Michigan's O-line is playing incredibly well. What they did against Iowa was as encouraging, and this is going to sound like hyperbole, and that's fine. We might say that in a couple of weeks that it is. That was as an important and as an encouraging performance from an offensive line as last year's Ohio State game. Like, I know it's not the same feeling. I know it's not the same gratification. I know it's not against the same talent. But Iowa teams don't get beat in the trenches, and Michigan soundly kicked the hell out of them in the trenches on Saturday, and it was without much doubt. I mean, they soundly ran through them. What they were able to do in that first drive was man ball. That was varsity versus JV. That was scout team defense for Iowa versus Michigan's ones. That's the type of look it had. Michigan was executing everything. The only thing that went wrong in that drive, I should say, that I was promptly corrected on Twitter because of my view from the press box, was McCarthy tripping over Zinter's ankle, not McCarthy tripping over himself, which is what it looked like from a distance. Now, with that being said, Josh, Aaron, over to you. With Corum, with the offensive line, how those two things are meshing together, I think it would be silly to say, oh, which one's more important, which one's been the product or whatever. I think they're both kind of equally important. But how much do you think this unit, I guess, in comparison to last year with Hassan Haskins, the explosiveness of Corum, how much does that add to this offense? Is that, we've talked about all offseason how McCarthy was going to be the X factor to beat a Georgia, to beat an Ohio State, to go to the playoff and give this team a shot. Is it actually Blake Corum? Is it actually Oluwatimi coming, being the addition he is, and Trevor Keegan coming back and at a lowest weight of his life? What are we keep talking about McCarthy, but is it Corum in the O-line that's going to keep this team in every game?
Well, I mean, they've definitely, they've shown that. Blake Corum was hugely important for the win against Maryland. So it's good to see what a healthy, so to speak, a healthy offensive line can do for Michigan when, they've played all 4 quarters together. This is the first time all year that the starting five has played an entire game, and we're talking, 5 games into the year. So I think definitely those two things are feeding off each other, and Blake Corum's doing what he's doing with a kind of a patchwork offensive line too. But that's also credit to, the Gio El-Hadis and the Carson Barnharts and Trente Jones, who's had a really, really solid last 2 weeks. I mean, people were down on him, and rightfully so. He had his issues, but he's really bounced back in a big way. And, he's becoming a really good right tackle. And, that's been huge for Michigan's offensive line. And, so I think you can't have one without the other. And even talking about JJ McCarthy, they got to give him time to operate back in the pocket. And, even though he's able to break contain, credit the offensive line for not getting him hit out there and giving him enough time to run around and find a guy like Donovan Edwards open in the end zone. So, so I think, all of those are kind of, working together in harmony. And, when they're all firing in all cylinders, we can kind of see what they're doing in the last couple of weeks. It's kind of the byproduct of it. So, Corum is definitely shown he's able to pick up the tough yards. I'm not saying that he's Hassan Haskins 2.0, but he's doing the stuff that Michigan asked Haskins to do, pick up the tough yards, not go down on the first contact, drag guys a couple of yards to pick up, key first downs and things like that. I don't think Michigan is where they are today without Blake Corum. But all of those things together is what is going to make Michigan either, Big Ten champions or, 11-1 against Ohio State. So, we'll see how the rest of the year kind of develops. But, the longer that group stays together and stays healthy, the more guys like Blake Corum is going to benefit, and JJ as well. So the more time he has the back there to throw, the likelihood of him being successful is only going to increase. So, I mean, it was really encouraging to see what Michigan was able to do against Iowa. I mean, they definitely manhandled a really physical front, a really good rush defense team. You're talking like number 1 or number 2 in the nation or something like that. And, they had like 140 something rush yards on them. So that was really impressive and really encouraging to see moving forward, because I know people had their questions about the offensive line, but I think they kind of, stood in the face of those questions and answered them in a big way. So, that development going forward is going to be huge for Michigan.
Shifting over to the defensive side, where Iabioki, as we now know him, has really taken stride and kind of taken over the quote unquote narratives, I suppose, of the defensive side of the ball and where things are going there from now until the end of the season. So when it comes to guys like Iabioki, you also can't forget about Mike Morris, and you can't forget about Taylor Harrell. Those 3 guys, I think, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as edge rush guys goes, that seems like the 3. And that seems like the 3 guys Michigan's going to go with. Taylor Upshaw has had his moments, but I think Taylor Harrell and Iabioki gives you the most upside by far, especially as a pass rusher. And then I think Mike Morris has unequivocally been the best of the bunch on the D-line so far, outside of maybe Mozzie Smith, right? So, and when you look at the numbers here, it's definitely Mike Morris with the best pass rush grade. According to PFF, he's at 82.5, which is extremely good in comparison to the country as well. Jalen Harrell is at 72.1, and you got Iabi Noma all the way down there at 74.8, who is third. 5 sacks for Mike Morris, 3 for Harrell. Quietly, Mason Graham with 2. As far as win percentage goes, Mike Morris winning 22% of his snaps, best in the team, 16% out of Harrell, but also 16% out of Anoma. So Anoma, and far less opportunities than Harrell, has the same win rate. Take that however you'd like to take it. But the potential that we've seen in these edge rushers and what we can see in the future, Brock, what do you think, and who do you think, I guess, of those 3? I mean, Mike Morris has kind of already, quote unquote, broken out. So I guess between Oki and Harrell, or Harrell, however you want to say it, who would you be taking as a potential breakout between those 2?
Well, yeah, you just said it. Mike Morris, he stepped up when the team needed him most there at the end of the game with 2 sacks. I think it was on Petrus on the last drive. But to your question, between Oki and Jalen Harrell there, I think Oki, and because we saw coming out of high school, he was one of the top 5 players in the country, behind names like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and a few others I can't remember right now. But he's got the build and the athleticism to go out there and dominate. He's built to be an edge rusher, and we've seen his freakish athletic ability so far this season. You saw at the end of the game there on that same drive where Morris had his 2 sacks, Oki got back there and got a hold of Petrus's jersey and dragged him to the ground, right? So if I had to choose between Oki and Harrell, I think it'd be Oki for me.
All right, let's move on to another Would You Believe It or Not. We'll do that with Davey Scoops here, my friend. We're talking about Mikey Sanders still. He's always a fun topic of discussion. He's been a tremendous and welcomed ascension this season for Michigan. Switched from wide receiver to cornerback, has done what I think everybody can agree, the consensus would say, is a tremendous job. So the question is, Davey Scoops, would you believe me if I told you that Mikey Sanders still's pass rush grade is over 90, which ranks in the top 10 percentile in the country?
Wow. I'm going to say I do believe it, because I know he has at least a handful of sacks and more than a handful of tackle for losses. He's been great, so I'm going to say I believe it.
So he's got a 90.1 pass rush grade. Wow. He has pressured 12 times, and in those 12 times, he's had a 9% success rate, which is obviously good to have a 90.1 grade. He's got 2 sacks, 1 QB hits. And as far as pressure goes, he's getting past the first level 33.3% of times. So, yeah, he's had a tremendous amount of success in blitzing the passer. So, and with that being said, what have you seen out of Mikey Sanders still? How much does he mean to this defense's success to be kind of like, let's not call him a diet Dax Hill. Let's not call him like a lesser version of Dax Hill, but he is playing that role, and he's done it pretty well.
He is playing that role. Now, I don't think he particularly had a good coverage game against Iowa. He got beat on a couple corner routes, gave up a couple deep passes. On like 3rd and 22, I think he gave up one, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, his emotional value is humongous to the team. To switch over, and coming into his senior year, I mean, to switch over and become a really good player and one of the best players on this Michigan defense, man, you've got to feel really good about that. And the players are responding extremely well to that. To see somebody be so selfless to give up, he had a couple touchdown catches last year, I believe. He was a good piece on offense. To be so selfless to switch over on defense and almost immediately become one of the better players on the entire defensive side of the ball. That's incredible. And those guys are responding extremely well to that. And he's incredibly important to the team. I think he's been really good. Just like you said, he's in the top 10th percentile for for rushing as a defensive back. That's incredible. You got to feel really good about what he's done and his performance so far this year.
All right, let's move on to Mr. Libby. We're going to talk to you about some cornerback play before we dive into our final segment of the night for everybody. So Michigan has 2 corners. They're both very good. Jamon Green, DJ Turner. Green's had 19 targets thrown at him. DJ Turner has had 18 targets thrown at him. Okay, and this is going to be a 2 or 3 part quiz for you, Mr. Libby. We'll call it 2. Who's given
Brandon's mic went out again. So I don't know what his quiz is, but how about this, Zach? How about you just kind of discuss the cornerback play. Obviously, Turner and Green are really two guys that have really come on strong as of late. And I guess in your mind too, we'll bring it back into your world at the same time too. How do you think that kind of impacts recruiting with the way those two are playing?
I mean, from a recruiting
exactly what I was going to ask.
From a recruiting standpoint, I mean, the 2023 class, they have no commitments at cornerback right now. There's 2 targets right now. Chris Peel from the Providence Day. We all know about him. Jair Hill from Kankakee, Illinois, who we all know about him as well. They're still uncommitted. So those are the top 2 targets right now. I don't really necessarily believe that cornerback play will be the big factor in their recruitments, but obviously with Turner and Green, just having them be stalwarts every week can't hurt. I actually watched the Iowa game on the plane ride home, and I was surprised with how accurate Iowa's quarterback was. Spencer Petras was. I mean, 21 for 31, 246 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, this is a quarterback who gets booed constantly at home. Like, this might be the worst quarterback in the Big Ten. But for him to really specifically find success in the seams, especially with this tight end, I think it kind of exposed the secondary a little bit. I know that's not necessarily Green and Turner's fault, but I mean, a secondary is a one unit. So I think if there's one thing that was bad about this game outside of the fourth quarter comeback, like letting off the gas, I think it's really correcting the mistakes of the secondary that allowed that many yardage through the air against arguably the worst offense in the FBS. So it might be a one-off thing because obviously Turner and Green played really well against Maryland. Like, they had one of the best PFF grades that I saw. I don't really know, but I wouldn't expect this to continue heading into Indiana.
So before my mic stabbed me in the back, like it always does, I was going to make the point that Jamon Green had given up more yards. However, Jamon Green had the higher coverage grade. Jamon Green's at 81.1. DJ Turner's at 76.1 as far as coverage grades go. Jamon Green, as we know and has been pointed out, has been stellar this season. So, all right, let's wrap this up. Each one of you guys just go in order. You don't need me to get in between here for this segment. We'll just go how the screen shows from Josh to Libby to Davis to Brock. We're going to pick somebody whose stock went up against Iowa and after it, and so far through the 5 weeks of the season, and then someone's stock who went down. If you repeat, you repeat. No problem, no rules. Just who's up, who's down through 5 weeks. I'll start. As far as who's up, I mean, it's hard to not say Blake Corum's stock's not up, right? I mean, even though we already knew how good he was, we kind of forgot like how good he was going to be because JJ overshadowed everything about this offense and who's good. I mean, everything from Roman Wilson to Blake Corum got overshadowed in the offseason by the quarterback talk. That's no secret. So I think Blake Corum's stock is up because it can't be anywhere else but up, right? And then whose stock is down? I mean, kind of hard to say at this point if anyone's stock is necessarily down. It's good to see Andrell Anthony get a catch. So I was going to go with him before this week, but they're actively trying to get him involved. AJ Henning not as involved as he was a couple of weeks ago against UConn, so you could maybe go with him. But shoot, as far as whose stock is down, I guess every tight end besides Luke Schoonmaker. Luke Schoonmaker is just going to command every target possible. So I'll go there. I'll hand it over to Josh, and then like I said, you guys don't need me in between. You can go in order here. Yeah,
I think Blake is obvious. If you're talking about a whole 5 game, the whole 5 game product, but from a Iowa perspective, Donovan Edwards' stock is way up. It's really good to see him healthy, relatively healthy, back out there playing. So he showed what he's capable of doing and what Michigan missed. He's kind of a change of pace back a little bit. Obviously an effective receiver. He's shown that multiple times throughout the year. One big catch against Hawaii and then obviously the touchdown against Iowa. So I think his stock is way up. And as far as stock down, I mean, I think the tight ends are also a good choice, but I would go with someone like a Braden McGregor, who kind of, has played well, but I mean, guys are just playing better in front of him. And that's not necessarily the bag on the kid or to say that he's just a bad player. It's just that, there's so many guys ahead of him that are doing so well, like we just talked about in the last segment. So, yeah, I guess pretty much, my answer, not just to single anyone out, would be defensive ends not named Mike Morris and Ayabi Oki. I think that'll probably be my answer.
Oh, it's my turn. I guess I'll stay with running backs for stock down. I mean, I don't think CJ Stokes saw the field. I don't know if that's because he fumbled, or it's just, Mike Hart doesn't want him out there against the Lions. But I think, like you said, Donovan Edwards is a clear number 2. I think Stokes had maybe have an opportunity with Edwards out last week to maybe split carries, but I think that fumble really hindered that. I'm gonna do another stock down. Cam Good. I didn't see him on the field. I don't know if it's just Mike Morris and Mozzie and Jenkins are all the solidified stars along with Mason Graham, but I don't know if Cam Good's gonna have a bigger role later in the season. I don't know if he's just going to be a factor or if it's just a failed experiment with the transfer portal. So
it's kind of what happened last year with Jordan Whitley too.
Yeah.
Like almost exactly what happened. They brought in a defensive tackle to the portal kind of late in the summer, and it just never came to fruition in the fall at all. So yeah, good pickup.
I'm going to do the opposite of Zach. I'm going to go 2 stock ups. So I'm going to take my first stock up, which is going to be a pretty normal one. Is got to be Mason Graham. That guy looked incredible, and he made a freshman All-American play if I've ever seen one, when he had the Iowa offensive lineman on his back heels and then slammed him down, got the Peaches for the sack. An incredible play. Really, really showcased why, a lot of people said that if it was a normal scouting service, he would have been a 5-star, and it showed why he was Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of California. I think that he's got to be one for me, and the others, Michigan as a whole. I think Michigan stock up as a whole. You have to take that into account. To win at Kinnick by multiple scores, I don't think Michigan's done that since '94. I think that you have to give them some stock up, and you're barring a unforeseen loss as a 22-point favorite against the Indiana Hoosiers, you're looking at a top 10 matchup against Penn State in 2 weeks. I'm going stock up into that, and if you beat Penn State there, you're talking about potentially being 11-0 when you travel to Columbus. So I'm gonna go Mason Graham and Michigan as a whole.
I'll finish it off by talking about 2 guys from the same position group. I'm gonna stick with one up, one down. I think stock up Roman Wilson. I think he's established himself as the clear number 1 receiver on this team. We saw, I think it was late in the second quarter or sometime in the second quarter, that play where McCarthy threw it to him in the end zone and just out of his reach there as he dove. But
it's happened a couple times the past 2 weeks too.
Right, and McCarthy will get there. He's got to just connect on a little bit deeper of a level with the receivers. But Roman Wilson, in my opinion, is the clear number 1 receiver. He's been the most consistent, and he's probably one of the faster guys, if not on the team, probably in the Big Ten. And in terms of stock down, I'm going to go. This is more centered around just this past weekend, but Cornelius Johnson. I'm not hating on the kid, but it kind of seemed like he was just running around out there, and I'd have to look at the stat sheet. I'm not sure if he got a catch, but if he did, it didn't really impact the game at all. So he's had a few catches earlier in the season. I think it was Hawaii on that one that McCarthy threw to him in the end zone there. But he was basically a complete non-factor this past weekend against Iowa.
All right. So Michigan plays Indiana this week and another road trip. So Michigan, I guess in recap of just everything we've talked about today, Michigan passed the road test, right, and flying colors and won in double digits, something they haven't done in a long time. Despite what people may say nationally, like in the Big Ten, if you're going to win at Kinnick by double digits, people are going to respect you more. You're expected to accomplish more than you were before the fact. So regardless of how it went down, you win at Kinnick by double digits. That's a very good thing for your football program, traditionally speaking. So in recap, that's kind of what we learned on Saturday. What will we learn against Indiana? Well, you'll find out next Monday on Rise to the Victors when we talk about that. They traveled to Indiana. It's another big noon kickoff, which is quite literally a Michigan product now. We might as well just call it that. I think, Josh, you had a tweet about that today. Big Michigan noon kickoff, which is probably what they wanted to be called. I think Gus and Joel Klatt both have an affinity with following this football team everywhere, which is fine because I love noon, as we all know. So, all right, we'll talk to you guys next week about Indiana. Make sure you stay tuned to the podcasts throughout the week. We'll talk to you on the next show, which will be Who's Got Next with Zach Libby and I talking Michigan football recruiting. So we'll talk to you then. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your Monday night.